Hello YouTube! It's a bit of a dreary morning today. It's Sunday, which I don't like Sundays on the best of days. Nobody likes Sundays. Sundays are grey and wet and dreary. And today is a properly Midland Sunday. It's grey, it's wet, it's dreary, it's extremely oppressive and unpleasant. So, in lieu of actually doing anything meaningful, I thought I would sit down and answer Dave Carlisle Prime's questions for Transformers fans. He recently did the latest in a series of videos that Dave has been doing for quite a while now. There's been a bit of a lull of late, but Dave does a series of videos called Getting to Know a Transformers Fan, which is exactly what it says on the tin. It's questions for the Transformers collecting community here on YouTube. Asking people how they got into Transformers and what Transformers mean to them and all of that stuff. It's always great fun. It's a really good way of getting to know people and getting to know who's new, who's sort of just come about on the YouTubes. I've already done, I think, 2 or 3 responses to these in the past annually. So some of these may actually sound very familiar, but you know, it's kind of fun. I enjoy getting into it. So, and it's really good to see Dave back in full form on YouTube. Dave Carlisle Prime, one of the scions of the community here on YouTube, definitely. Before I get into answering the questions, there is a little bit of housekeeping nonsense. Paul, a Destruction Snake Pit, is selling his Fortress Maximus. I don't know for how much. I'm not quite sure what he's looking for, but from what I understand, it's in really good condition. And if anyone is interested, if you'd like to, I don't know, drop me a PM or something, and I'll get in contact with Paul and ask it, and see if we can go from there. So yes, a Fortress Maximus is for sale in very good condition by all accounts. Anyway, on to Dave's questions now. When I can find where I put them, that is. Question 1, how long have you been a Transformers fan? That's pretty good one, actually. Forever. For me, anyway, forever. I was born in 1984 when the Transformers originally were launched as a franchise, as a cartoon, and as a comic, and as a toy line. So they've always been there. I actually, as I said in my previous videos, I actually can't remember a time when there were not Transformers. They have always been there. So my whole life, 28 years, I have been a Transformers fan up till this point. There have been lulls, there have been moments where I've slipped out of it. I remember after Beast Machines finished, when I went to university, I kind of fell away, because then we slipped into Armada, which I fucking hate, and Energon, which I fucking hate, and the Unicron trilogy, which I generally fucking hate. Not to say there are not good there are some really corking toys in that, particularly in the Cybertron line, but I didn't like the what I perceived as a shift backwards. First of all, I didn't like the fact that the story wasn't continuing. I didn't like the fact that we weren't going to see what was happening on Techno-Organic Cybertron after Beast Machines. I didn't like the fact that these characters, we weren't going to see a little bit more of them. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more of what was happening with the Maximals and the resurrected Predacons and all of that stuff. That would have been really interesting. That annoyed me. I still think there's enormous potential for that story. I really, really do. A Techno-Organic Cybertron. It's completely new. It's completely interesting. Exploring, just as a landscape, as a concept, exploring that would be fascinating. Really, really interesting stuff. But, yeah, I slipped away from it, because I always get into Transformers through the narrative. It's always through the characters or through the mythology or whatever. And Armada, Energon, and Cybertron don't have that. They really don't. I mean, the comics, the Dreamwave comics were okay, and they were only okay. The cartoons are abominations. They are just appalling. It's like watching an episode. I wish, actually, it'd be great to see so, you know, the guy who does Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, which is fucking hilarious. I would love to see him do a mini-series of Armada, Energon, and Cybertron. It would be so hilarious. Little Karibo, that's his name. Little Karibo, who does the Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged cartoons, which are absolutely stunning. Oh god, I can't stand that. No, but I fell away from it a little bit then came back to it shortly later with the resurrection of the universe lines and all of that stuff. When it started to become a little bit more interesting again, then I got right back into it, and I've been here ever since, festering away. Right, what else? What is your earliest memory of Transformers? That's a good one. I always find these questions difficult to answer, A, because of the sheer unreliability of memory. I mean, memory is such a problematic medium. It comports itself, particularly old memories, from childhood or whatever, they comport themselves as having such weight, as having such detail and drama, and they're almost always wrong, in the sense that they are exaggerated and conflated, and details are emphasized to the nth degree. I mean, if you, as you are now, could go back and have that experience again, using your current perceptions, then it would be completely different. It would, in fact, you would probably not recognize the experience. It would be so unbelievably different in emphasis, in tone, and so on and so forth. Even if you could go back and watch your younger self having that experience, I'm sure it wouldn't be the same as how you recall it now. Memory is almost, it's a significant amount of imagination and exaggeration. We kind of write our own narratives in that regard, so it's hard to say, but I do have what seem to be, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, this is not to diminish memory as a means of personality construction. It doesn't matter, because it's these self-created narratives that formulate personality and character. So we do have the capacity to write our own narratives. It's not all imposition. In fact, it's not even significant imposition. There's a lot that's us, ourselves. And that gives a certain amount of power. When you realise that you can be your own ideal to a certain degree, there is a certain amount of power there. But I do seem to have a couple of memories, and I don't know how accurate they are. I remember being really young, and this is an old one. I remember being unbelievably young. I mean, I couldn't have been very old at all. Seeing a clip of Transformers on Whack-A-Day, I think, with Timmy Mallet. And I remember seeing that and being rather enthralled. And I also recall having an annual, which my mother got me from a car boot sale that was falling to bits, but which I still have. It's still falling to bits. It's even more falling to bits now. And that is really cool. The annual, I think it's the 1985 annual. It's the one that has this unbelievably good picture of the Dinobots on the inside front cover. And that's the sort of thing I learned to read with, and reading is very, very important to me. I learned to read long before I went to school, because I had access to things like these Transformers annuals and to books about dinosaurs and stuff. So that's very significant to me. That's very important. I will always keep that annual, as long as it insofar as it doesn't just crumble into dust, which is looking quite likely. I will always keep that because it's important to me. So those are my earliest memories of Transformers. I didn't buy the toys for the longest time because obviously I was too young to have them. The first couple of waves I was too young to get into. I didn't start getting into the toys until I was until I was 3 or 4, and that was in 1987, 1988. So I think my first Transformer was a Micromaster, actually. Or was it? I remember my brother, I can't remember which one of us it was. My brother and I both got Transformers at the same time. And one of us got the Pretender Grimlock. What an excellent introduction, eh? And one of us got one of the Micromaster bases. I think I got the Micromaster base. It was the one with Terror Tread and Cement Head. And I was enamoured of that. I thought it was a stunning toy. But yeah, those were my first Transformers. So late on. Maybe that's part of the reason why I more positively identify with the Beast Wars Transformers. I mean, I wouldn't have been, I suppose, the target age even when Beast Wars came out. Beast Wars came out when I was about 12, 13, something like that. So I would have been on the outside for that, but I still enjoyed them quite a lot. So yeah, those are my earliest memories of Transformers. Who is your favourite Transformer of all time? That's really difficult. I like different Transformers for different reasons. It's always the character. It's very rarely just the toy. Favourite? It's hard to say. I'm tempted to say Beast Wars Megatron. I'm very tempted to say Beast Wars Megatron because I love the character. I love everything about him. I love how vaudevillian he is. I like the fact that he's the first Megatron that's competent. He's very clever, manipulative, sly, very strong, capable, and so on and so forth. I like Beast Wars Megatron a lot. He's also very funny. He has this wonderful camp sensibility to him. He's like a vaudeville villain, you know. He's completely over the top and has this incredible sense of the theatrical, which I really appreciate. And later on, he becomes even better. In Beast Machines, he's even better. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a transition between Beast Wars and Beast Machines. I want to know what the basis for his shift in philosophy is, his anti-organic, anti-individualist philosophy is, because it's much more certain and dynamic than his motivations in Beast Wars. In Beast Wars, he's just a Megatron. You know, he's megalomaniacal, and it's all about personal power and personal gain. It's not in Beast Machines. In Beast Machines, he's kind of altruistic in a weird kind of way. He believes what he's doing is right. He really fervently does. He's a fanatic, and that's interesting. Who else? G1 Scorponok was my favourite character for a very long time. I really, really liked G1 Scorponok. The toy as well. I mean, I was after that toy for the longest time when I was a kid. I kind of idealised it in my own mind because I saw it in a catalogue, and by that point you couldn't get them. It was an old catalogue, so by that point, you know, you just couldn't get Scorponok in this country, and this was before eBay. The only way you could get it really is in second-hand car boot sales or whatever. And it took me a long time to get Scorponok. And also, I like the character. I like what was done with the character in the UK comics. I think he's really interesting. He's the first sane Decepticon, commander. But I would really like to see him come back in some of the more modern comics. I would like to see him come back and be a bit more rounded. I mean, they did Doom Injury in IDW, but I didn't like him in that. He was just a bad guy in that. You know, there was very little else to him. Who else? There are lots of characters I like in Transformers. Most of them from the Beast era, because that's when character really started to coalesce and define itself. At the moment, the characters I'm really into are Prime Starscream. Transformers Prime Starscream, I think, is absolutely spectacular. For me, it's exactly what Starscream is supposed to be. It's the core of the character and the ideal of the character. He's not some shrieking imbecile. He's clever and sly and very manipulative and relies on the power of persuasion more than anything else. I like that. I like that a hell of a lot. So yes, those are my favourite. I like the characters. I like the Transformers that have a certain degree of ambiguity to them. I don't like just your Skywarps or your just standard villains or your standard heroes. Generally, I find Optimus Prime to be dull. I always preferred Primal from Beast Wars. I think Primal is really interesting because he has more going on. He's not a hero archetype. He's got more. He initially is just the captain of a research vessel who happens to be thrown into a military situation, and later on he becomes. He has lots of different character developments. He becomes a spiritual guru, a messianic character, a sage, and that's even more interesting. He always has more going on, it seems to me, than Prime does. And as leader characters go, he's much more interesting to me, in the same way that Rodimus Prime is always more interesting to me. Rodimus Prime is always more interesting because he has stuff going on behind the scenes. He's not just your classic Arthurian archetype of a hero. He has doubts and he has problems. I mean, it's not always well recorded. Let's say that in the season 3 of the G1 cartoon, it's really bad. It's pretty goddamn awful. He just comes off as pretty fucking annoying, to be honest, and whining and whingy. But I like the idea of Rodimus Prime, let's put it that way. He hasn't been properly represented yet, but I like the idea of Rodimus Prime. Fort Max, too. Fort Max I've always found to be a massively underplayed character. I like his pacifism. It's a really interesting perspective to take, especially considering his position in the war and the fact that he's one of the most powerful, or he is probably the most powerful Autobot ever. I mean, he's bigger than all of the combiners put together. He's a city. He's a giant living headmaster city. One of the most powerful weapons the Transformers have ever developed. He's probably one of the few singular Transformers who could potentially do a little bit of damage to Unicron on his own. But is a pacifist, doesn't like fighting, doesn't like waging war. I find that interesting, but it's never been properly explored. Not in any medium yet. So, here's hoping. Right, where are we? What is your most prized Transformers possession? That's a good question, actually. I don't... It's a bizarre thing to say for a collector, but I'm not that materialistic about them. Bizarrely. I'm not a collector, for example, who has to get everything. I'm just not. I don't want everything from a particular line. I only want the things I like. And that's it. I think the only line where I've become a little bit more completionist is the Beast Wars. Principally because I like almost everything from that line. Even its massive failures are really interesting because they're so weird. They're so different from any other Transformer you're likely to get. But in terms of the possessions I get the most sort of visceral joy out of, it would have to be Magmatron. I just get a buzz out of Magmatron. He's my actually going back, just raking it back a little bit to favourite Transformers. Magmatron. Magmatron is one of my favourite Transformers. He's my definitely my favourite toy of the Transformers. I love everything about it. I love the design, I love the texture, I love the way it goes together. Almost everything about it in that regard is fascinating. But he's actually a good character too. I mean, it took him a while to get some proper development. Oh, sorry, shifting there because my knee's gone to sleep. It took him a while to get some proper development, which he got in the generally not great Beast Wars, The Gathering comics, the stuff that came out. Was it IDW or Dreamwave? I can't remember. I don't know. But he did get some character development in those, and he actually distinguished himself as fairly interesting. Fairly interesting. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties and stuff going on and whatnot. And I hope you had a nice cake or cup of tea or whatever the fuck it was you went and had. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, prized Transformers possessions. That's the funny thing. I do enjoy the toys. I do get a sort of visceral pleasure out of the plastic and whatnot, but they're not as important to me as the background or the characters or whatever. So they aren't that important, because of the nature of what I do. I mean, I'm a writer by nature and increasingly by profession. I exercise my imagination more than anything else in the world. And these characters already exist in my mind. Usually, whenever I get a new toy, the thing that's going through my mind is ways that it fits into mythologies and the way its character develops and all of that shit. So the characters are already mine in a bizarre way. I don't need the toys as such. The toys are just sort of like a physical, almost like a jumping off point. Just something that can inspire through looking or touching or playing with. They're not as important, and they're becoming less important. That's bizarre. They are becoming less important as time goes on. The actual toys themselves are becoming less and less important to me. And that's true of materia in general, apart from my books. I mean, my books I wouldn't be without. But materia I find to be generally unsatisfying on a very profound level. But that's just the way it seems to be going at the moment. So prized possession, I don't... it's difficult to say. It seems to have the wrong flavour, the wrong emphasis for me personally anyway. So, moving on. Where in the world do you come from, live? I'm actually from Zimbabwe. No, I'm not. I'm a very pasty white, very, 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 very Englishman. Sort of. The thing is, I come from Britain. I come from the UK, the Midlands specifically, but I don't really define myself by any kind of geographical or cultural or nationalistic specification. It just doesn't. Apart from when you have like an official form, and you need to tick the box that says white British or whatever. It's kind of like, yeah, that's the best one, I suppose. So there you go. Outside of Transformers, what do you do with your life? I do a great deal with my life. Transformers are not my primary interest. They are. I find them fascinating, and what I like more than the Transformers is the people that I've met through the Transformers. I actually find the fandom more fascinating than the subject of the fandom, bizarrely. I like the fact that the Transformers, my enthusiasm for them has given me a chance to meet people who I like, who have similar interests, and so on, and to sort of form a kind of little cultural bracket. I find that fascinating. I mean, thanks to my efforts here on YouTube, I've met some of the people I'm definitely closest to, some very, very, very close friends indeed, who have themselves sort of allowed me to develop as a human being massively, massively. I mean, there's such a profound difference between the person who is sitting in front of this camera and the person who made the first video on YouTube 3 or 4 years ago. Massive difference, just huge. But yeah, I do lots of stuff. I'm a writer primarily. That's how I define myself. Recently become an author. I have short stories published and whatnot. I do a lot of editing work at the moment as well with Dark Moon Digest. Plug. Dark Moon Digest is a really fun publishing house in the US. They publish really good, silly pulp horror, and off the beat horror as well. It's really strange. They produce a wide variety of stuff that you wouldn't really get in mainstream publication houses, so it's interesting, you know, and they're a very good jumping off point for good for new authors as well. They consider a lot of unpublished work, and I edit for them, as well as having my stories occasionally published in the magazine and so on and so forth. So yeah, go and check Dark Moon Digest out. But that's principally what I do with my time. I write fiction all the time. I mean, all the time. My walls here are plastered in notes. Just these things here. That's spare space for notes because I couldn't fit them all on my fucking walls. I'll be going onto the ceiling reasonably soon. I've got a pile down there. I mean, it's literally like that high. It's like that high of just stories. There's folders and note pages full of shit down there. I write all the time. All the time. Any spare moment I get, I will be writing. And when I'm not writing, I will likely be reading. I do... I have an almost like an addiction with fiction. Oh, that's dreadful. I can't believe I said that. But yeah, I am addicted to fiction and literature and narrative. I can't be without it. If I am, I actually do get a little bit... but I like lots of things. I like television series. I like cartoons. I like any narrative medium. Any narrative medium I will be hooked into. As part of actually living, I work as a PA and support worker, and occasionally a tutor to people with mental disabilities. Aside from that, I have also recently started collecting the He-Man toys, which I like as well. What else do? I play Games Workshop tabletop war games and role-playing games and stuff like that. That's another background, another mythology that I find to be very rich and very interesting to engage with. But I also like the visceral part of it. I like the sculpting and the painting and all of that stuff. That's incredible fun. In fact, do I have an example of my painting around here? I do, yes. Hang on. Some of you may have seen this guy. This is one of the Games Workshop miniatures I've been working on for fucking ages. This is my Great Unclean One, Sniffles. He's a metal miniature from the Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 ranges. He's been work in process for about 4 years now. I sort of slip in and out of Games Workshop depending on what's going on with the company, because the company is annoying at times. Some of their attitudes towards their fans are really fucking annoying. But it's hard to argue against the quality of the miniatures, the quality of the gaming world, and the quality of the background material is fantastic by and large. This guy Sniffles, he's not only painted by me and sculpted by me, but his head is completely scratch sculpted from modelling putty, because I don't like the new head that they package this guy with. It looks like a frog without eyes, and I don't like it. So I sculpted my own head for him. So yeah, I really, really enjoy this sort of thing. He's also got about 12 layers of paint on him to get the proper sort of rotting, disgusting effect. They're called Great Unclean Ones for a reason. They're just big sacks of pus and disease and every malady you can possibly think of. They're demon servants of Nurgle, who is the god of disease and decay and all of that shit. They're great fun. I mean, just how evocative these things are. That's what I like about them. The mythology is very rich, and there's a great metaphysics in it too, which I'll probably do a video about it at some other point. So yeah, that's something I'm doing a lot with my time at the moment. Games Workshop, sculpting, and wargaming, and role-playing, and all of that shit. I've recently got into the 40k role-playing, which is really good, through the Black Crusade system. That's a lot of fun. I'm sure Sniffles will be turning up in that at some point, at which point he'll probably be a full-fledged character, because I tell you, Greater Demons in that system are kick-ass. They're really good fun. So yeah, anything that I have an obsession with darkness, with the shadowy stuff in the human psyche. Anyone who reads my fiction, Darkmoon Digest, go and purchase the magazine, will know that I have a real obsession with the dark stuff. And I don't mean dark in that sort of Tim Burton cartoon way, in the sort of popular way it's used. I mean down deep subconscious shit, the sewage and the rot and the decay and the neurosis. I find that fascinating. I really do. So there's a lot of that in my fiction, and there's a lot of that in the subject matter I generally enjoy. I like that stuff a lot, hell of a lot. So yes, that's what I'm into besides Transformers. What is the origin of your YouTube screen name? Oh, there's no great story behind that. I just needed a name that nobody else had and which was distinct, so I just threw together two words that I like the sound of, and which was sort of alliterative. So Exaggerated Elegy. There you go. Nobody can spell it. Whose videos do you enjoy watching? I watch a lot of YouTube videos actually, and my interest isn't secluded to just the Transformers community. I like a lot of stuff. I like old cartoons and old children's shows, and I like free domain movies and that sort of thing. At the moment I really like a lot of the creative stuff on YouTube. I'm enamored of those people who are using the internet as a means of taking power and money and authority away from the corporations and studios and whatnot, who are taking it out of their hands and creating their own material, which they are giving directly to the viewers or the consumers. So, or whatever accolades or money does happen to come about goes directly to them, and there's none of this hideous tumescent structure of corruption around it. I find that fascinating. A good example are the people who do the Marble Hornets thing, the Slender Man movies. I'm enamored by them. Not only are they producing a project that has no money behind it, or that initially had no money behind it, and initially wasn't making any money but now is, they are also producing something of incredible sophistication that blows any mainstream horror movie that's been released at the cinema in recent years out of the water. Completely out of the water. Another good example is Dave Alt Horror. Dave Alt Horror, who produce these wonderful, and I mean absolutely brilliant horror shorts, some of which are less than 3 minutes long, but which are perfectly formed. Brilliant channel. I cannot recommend them enough. Dave Alt Horror. I'll see if I can get a link up here or down there in the syphilis bar. But anything like that, anything where people are doing something creative or interesting or engaging in debate, I find to be absolutely fascinating. I don't really watch I don't engage with the atheist and religious community much anymore, because I think it's just become weary and very tired. Everything that's been said that can be said thus far has been said, and there hasn't been much in the way of engagement with the core problems. There's a tendency for members of one or either side to just throw aside the ambiguities or the issues that come up and just concentrate on towing the line. Just repeating the same very weary old apologisms or whatever that have been debunked a million times or have been addressed a million times. And that just makes the conversation impotent. It really does. There are other things that can be said. There are other conversations to be had here, but there's no one who wants to engage with them because the whole structure has become far too tribalistic. It's become far too communal. It's become a case of this tribe against that tribe, this mantra against that mantra. There's a lot of debates to be had about metaphysics and about the possibilities of something analogous to a god that may exist out there or in here or wherever. There's a lot of stuff to discuss there, but we don't have those conversations. Sadly, we just don't have those conversations, and that I find to be a massive, massive shame. I mean, I suppose I could initiate these conversations, but the things I've tried to in the past and they just fall dead. So yeah, I don't engage with that much anymore. But yeah, I watch a lot on YouTube. I like a lot of shit. I really, really do. It's what I used to wind down after I finished writing. It's kind of the equivalent of my soap in that regard. I spend most of my days in a state of heightened... it's what I think Barker... I can't remember if it's Barker or King called the alpha state, which is that state of almost self-hypnosis where you're in a condition of high creation where it's just flowing out of you. And by the end of that, because I write a lot, I mean, if I'm going to write in a day, I write a significant portion of the day. I'm talking like, if I start at 9, I won't finish till 4, and if it's still going, it's still flowing, I'll carry on till 6, and so on and so forth. So once I'm done, I'm knackered. I really am tired. So what I tend to do is just veg out in front of YouTube and just watch long plays, let's plays of video games where people comment. I like them. I really find them fascinating. I particularly like to watch ones of video games that I've played, so that I can see the different ways that people play, and I can get their opinions, how they perceive the video game. There's a couple in particular I watch a lot. Kikoskia. Kikoskia is one of my favourite Let's Plays because he's so entertaining. He's very funny, very witty and erudite. He's got a great voice. He's got a lovely voice, Kikoskia. He's just wonderful to hear talk. And he's so witty. He's so funny. Necroscope86 I like a lot. He's very, very approachable, I think, Necroscope. He's got this familial quality to him, where he'll talk about something and you just feel like you're talking to a mate, and that's really cool. I like Necroscope a lot, and he plays a lot of the video games that I like. So his Let's Play of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is really good. Really good. I would seriously recommend going and checking that out. Spoonie. Oh, I love Spoonie. I must admit, hang on, I'm going to put my Great Unclean One away because he's made of metal and he's heavy, and I don't want to sit here holding him because I'd drop him and smash him, which I've done before. Yes, he's not going to fall off there. Yeah, Spoonie, the Spoonie one. I like the Spoonie one a lot. I don't always agree with his assessments of things, but I find Noah so engaging and funny, and I love it when he's ranting. I really, really like it when he's ranting about something. His 10-part review of Final Fantasy VIII is stunning. It's so funny. There's so much that he viscerally hates about that game that it's just a joy to watch. Also, he's my kind of guy. He just is. I mean, were he of my orientation, which he's sadly not, and were he in this country, I would probably be making a beeline for him at this point, because he's quite cute and he's also just my kind of guy. He likes the same things that I like, and he has that lovely sort of insular, slightly geekish quality. So, you know, the Spoonie one is great, and I like most of that guy with the glasses. I like the Cinema Snob and so on and so forth. I think these people are doing what, even though they're not doing it deliberately, they're doing it completely because they enjoy doing it. They are doing what I was talking about before. They are taking power away from the media that has up until this point controlled stories, that have controlled narrative, that have controlled news, and so on and so forth. They're taking it out of their hands, and that's what I admire them for more than anything. More than anything. So yeah, what else have we got? Which Transformer is your holy grail? Again, it's the same thing as with prized possessions. I don't necessarily have holy grails as such. There's some that I would like. There are some that I would like. Actually, my holy grails are ones that don't exist. They Ray, I Love Mess, and I have discussed this on numerous occasions. And Nick Hardy he has actually produced some of these things, and I mean, he's actually gone out and got Transformers and repainted them based on what Ray and I have suggested. One of the things that Ray and I have discussed a lot, and I think that both of us want mutually as much, is a BotCon set of a repainted Optimal Optimus and Transmetal 2 Megatron, the Dragon, as Ape Face and Snapdragon. That's kind of my holy grail. It's the Transformers that don't exist but I wish did. Question 10. If you could transform into anything, what would it be? God. Or the Devil. I don't mind either way. In fact, I probably prefer the Devil, simply because I like his style more.